story is one that has stood the test of time. It is a story from, where was it? Wait a minute.
Italy.
Italy, like I want to say Ireland. Here, both titles. A story from Italy about Catherine, that sly country lass, and Roger. This kind of story is Roger's baby. So, have at it, Roger.
Thank you. There was a farmer who worked in a vineyard in Italy, and he was hoeing away, getting the weeds out of his vineyard, and his hoe struck something solid. And when he reached down to see what it was, he picked it up. It wasn't a rock, it was a mortar. A huge mortar, and it was really heavy, and when he cleaned it off, he realized this mortar was solid gold. Well, he thought the only place for something this valuable would be in the castle of our king. He liked the king and thought he'd give the king this gift. So he took the mortar home, and his daughter, Catherine, was there, and he showed it to her and told her that he was going to take it to the king. And she said, I think that the king is not going to appreciate that, and you're just going to be wasting your time. He's going to pick it up, turn it around, and he's going to find something wrong with it. He will probably say, it's big and beautiful, but where's the pestle? And then you'll be out of the mortar, and he won't even appreciate it. I don't recommend you even go. But he was insistent. So he took the mortar, and he went to the castle. And he had an audience with the king. And he presented it to him, saying, I think I would like to give this mortar to you so you can display it in your castle. And the king picked it up and turned it around and around. And he said, it's big and beautiful, but where's the pestle? And when the farmer heard those words, he slapped his forehead and he said, she said exactly those words. And the king said, who's she? And he said, my daughter Catherine said those exact same words. And he thought, sounds like a very wise woman. I would like to have her do something for me. And so he had a servant bring in a bundle of flax plants. And he took those and he gave them to the farmer, and he said, take these home to your daughter Catherine and tell her that by tomorrow morning I want her to weave shirts for my entire regiment. Oh, the farmer thought, that's an impossible task, but you don't say no to a king. So he said, yes, your majesty. And he took the bundle of flax and he went home and he gave it to Catherine and told Catherine what the king had demanded. And he said, you are in trouble now. You can't do that. And then she thought about it and she said, don't worry, father. And she said, let me see. She grabbed that bundle of flax and she shook it real hard. And I know that you all know that if you take a bundle of flax and shake it real hard, little scales fall off. You all know that, don't you? Well, she did that, and she picked up the little pile of scales from the floor and put them in a little cloth bag, tied it up and gave it to her father and said, Father, take this little bag of scales back to the king and tell him I will be happy to fulfill your order if you will make me a loom out of these scales, for I have no loom. And the father said, well, that's impossible. I can't go back to the king with a message like that. And she begged him and cajoled him and finally forced him to go back to the castle. And he met with the king and told the king what she told him about the scales. Make me a loom. Well, he thought, this is a very wise woman. I would like to meet her in person. And he told the farmer that she was to come to him neither naked nor clothed, with a stomach neither full nor empty, neither on horseback nor walking, and neither in the day or the night. And the father thought, another impossible task. But you don't say no to a king, so he said, yes, your majesty, and went back to Catherine. and told Catherine what she was required to do. And he thought, your head's going to roll now. This is really serious. How are you going to... She said, don't worry, Father. Just bring me a fishing net. So he went to a neighbor and he borrowed a fishing net and he brought it to her. And she woke up very early the next morning, way before sunrise. And wearing nothing, she just draped the fishing net over her body. And she ate one lupin seed so that her stomach would be neither empty nor full. And she went out and got a goat out of the barn, and she straddled the goat, 1 foot above the ground, the other dragging the ground, so that she would be neither walking nor on horseback. And she went to the castle well before daylight, so that she would get there in neither the day nor the night. Well, the guards thought, this is a mad woman, and they wouldn't let her in. But she said, I am fulfilling the request of the king. You must let me in. So they did. And they went and woke up the king. And he came down and saw her, and he burst into laughter. He thought, this is the silliest thing I've ever seen, and realized she had fulfilled all those requests. And he said, I have been looking for a woman like you for a long time. Would you please be my wife and be the queen? Oh, yes, she was very happy to do that, to be the queen. And he said, under one condition, you must not meddle in my affairs. And she agreed. She went home and told her father she was going to marry the king and be the queen. And he warned her, he said, if a king gives you something, he could take it away from you just as quickly. Be careful. I will keep your work clothes hung on a hook in your room just in case. So she went back to the castle, and she and the king began to prepare for the wedding. There would be a month-long celebration after their wedding, and they would invite the entire kingdom to come and help them celebrate at the capital city where they lived. And that happened. There was a wedding. Now, it was custom in those days for the queen to accompany the king whenever he went to the court of justice to help, so that he would make decisions and she would have a little input. Well, it turned out that every time he made a decision, she would have an opposite opinion and disagree with his decisions. And he got tired of being told that he was making the wrong decision, and so he forbade her to come to the court of justice after that. Well, the celebration was still going on. It was still very crowded in the town. A man came to town with a cow. It was pregnant, and he wanted to take it to the market. There were no places to put the cow. He couldn't find a barn that had room. He managed to find a room in an inn, so he stayed at the inn and asked the innkeeper what he could do with the cow. And the innkeeper said, tie it to that cart over there. It belongs to another farmer that's here at the inn. So he did that. He woke up in the morning, went out and found that the cow had given birth to a calf. Well, he got ready to take the two animals to the market when the owner of the cart came out and said, oh, wait, you can take your cow to market, but the calf belongs to me because the cow was tied to my cart. Well, the owner of the cow thought, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't have the calf, and they got into an argument, and the argument developed into a fight, and then they were picking up implements of destruction and hitting each other with them, and a crowd gathered around, and the constables came and broke up the fight. And they marched the two men right off to the king in his court of justice. And when the king heard the arguments of both of them, he awarded the calf to the owner of the cart. Well, that really upset the owner of the cow. He was not happy with that, but the king made a decision and he had to live with it. So he went back and told the innkeeper what had happened. And the innkeeper said, you know, sometimes I have heard rumors that the queen often rules in opposition to what the king has ruled. Go to the queen and try to get her to help you. And he went back to the castle, but they would not let him in. They said the queen no longer goes to the court of justice, and they denied his entrance. Well, he was very upset and dejected. And so he started to walk away, and he was following the wall of the castle, and he heard a woman's voice on the other side of the wall. And he climbed into a tree and saw that it was the queen. So he hopped down inside the castle and fell to his knees and begged her, please help me. And she told her what had happened and that he didn't have his calf and it was unfair. She said, tomorrow the king will be going on a hunting trip. He will pass a lake that is always dry this time of year. You go ahead of the king, take a fishing net and a bag to put the fish in, and you go pretend that you are catching fish. Throw your net out, pretend you're getting the fish, put them in your bag, and then when the king stops to ask you what you're doing, you just simply say, if a cart can give birth to a calf, surely a dry lake can produce fish. And so he did that. He went out and ahead of the king, and sure enough, the king and his men came by that lake, and when he saw him, he asked him what he was doing. And he said, well, if a cart can give birth to a calf, surely a dry lake can produce fish. Oh, when he heard that, he said, there's somebody else's finger in this pie. You've been talking to the queen. And yes, he admitted he had. But the king realized that the queen was right. It should be the owner of the cow. And he reversed the decision and told him he would give back the calf. Well, when he got back from that hunting trip, he went to Catherine and said, you have not followed my instructions to not meddle in my business. You must go back to your farm. I'm divorcing you. Leave the castle tonight. And I'll let you take one thing with you that you like. And she said, well, if I leave tonight, people are going to see me leaving, and they're going to gossip, and it's going to be bad for you, and it's going to be bad for me. I promise I will be gone by the time sunrise comes tomorrow. And he said, fair enough. So that night, she went down to the cooks, and she told them, I want you to prepare heavy, salty meats, roasts, and hams. And she told them to bring up 3 times as many bottles of wine as they usually brought up for dinner. Well, when they sat down to eat that night, the king ate, and he ate, and he ate. And she poured bottle after bottle after bottle of wine into his glass. And finally, he was so drunk, he was stuttering, his eyes glazed over, and he fell back into his chair, fast asleep like a pig. And she ordered her servants to pick up that chair with the king in it and take it out of the castle. Following her, they went out onto the road. They went all the way back to her farm. They got there, and she knocked on the door. It was dark. Her father came and said, I knew it. I knew you'd be back. She said, be quiet, Father. Just come down and open the door. So he went and opened the door, and she ordered the servants to take the king up into her bedroom, take off his clothes, put him in bed, and then go back to the castle. And then she went up, climbed in beside the king, and went to sleep. Well, about the middle of the night, the king kind of stirred and woke up, half woke up, and the bed was harder than usual, and the sheets were rougher than usual, and he felt for Catherine, and he said, Catherine, I thought I told you you had to leave. She said, it's the middle of the night. Go back to sleep. So he went back to sleep, but in the morning, when the sun really did shine into that room, he heard donkeys braying, and he heard sheep bleating, and he heard a rooster crowing, and when he opened his eyes, he realized he was not in a place he was familiar with, and he said, where are we? And she said, well, we're at my farm. You gave me an instruction, and I followed it. And I brought my favorite thing from the castle home, and that's you. And I'm keeping you. And then they made up, and he laughed, and they made up, and they went back to the castle. And for all I know, they're still living in that castle. But now the queen accompanies to the king every time he goes to the court of justice.
We would like to thank you very much for coming. And another little bit of Ireland in here. When the Irish are done storytelling, they say, you take this story, and when you tell it better. And we give that to you. So we are ready to end, and thank you all very much once again for coming. Take the story, and when you tell it better. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this video. To learn more, scroll down to the information window below. It's going to look similar to this one. And while you're there, you can also find a clickable link to our website, StorytellersGuildofAnchorage.org. Here you can learn more about our group and get information on new and upcoming events. And for more videos like this, please also check out our YouTube channel, Storytellers Guild of Anchorage, by clicking here, right below the video title. It's going to take you to our channel page where you can see more videos like this one. See you next time.